Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Untitled. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with the president of Transform Zimbabwe, a political activist, and the convener of the July 31st anti-corruption protests. Enjoy this conversation. Jacob Ngarivhume, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, and thank you for creating the time between going to report to the police and coming to have this conversation with us. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Trevor. Thank you so much for inviting me and also for the great work you are doing. This has become an iconic show, I tell you.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
You're so kind. You're so
Thank
kind. Jacob, you called for the 31 July anti-corruption protests. Mm-hmm. And you were very clear that these should be non-partisan and non-violent. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised by how the public reacted and how the government reacted to your call? Yeah,
quite correct, Trevor. I'll tell you that when I called for the nation to act as far as corruption is concerned, initially I even didn't believe that we were going to get that traction which we got at the end from Zimbabweans. And given the background of fear, issues of fear, and also how divided our nation is, you know, on who is calling the demonstration. You know, people ask a lot of things. Who is Jacob Ngarivhume? Why is he calling for the demonstrations? Who is he to do that, and so on? But then what really surprised me and heartened me is that Zimbabweans responded. Zimbabweans locally and also in the diaspora, you know, most Zimbabweans, you know, were talking about it, retweeting, posting on Facebook and all over. And it was so heartening for me. And of course, the response from government was equally, though expected, but what was so disheartening. They took it to be something else, a monster, labeling us that this is coming from the West. And I would even look at my skin at some time to say, wow, have I turned into a white man? But, you know, this is typically what they do. But, you know, overall, the response from Zimbabweans was exceptional and good, I tell you.
And take us through your thinking process of saying, finally, 31 July, we need to have a protest around anti-corruption. What are the things that got you so upset and so agitated that you ought to call the nation to take a stand on corruption?
You know what, Trevor? We know the effects of corruption in this country, and corruption has been talked about. It has become systemic, it is endemic, and we all know that, and we've talked about it. Then there are outstanding issues and matters that have been talked about, but we have not addressed as a nation. For instance, I would tell you 5 months after the late President Mugabe, you know, took off the lead to the 15 billion which was squandered from diamonds. You know, it was, to me, it was the wow moment to say $15 billion. And put in context, 15 billion. You know, when I traveled to Dubai, one of the things that fascinated me a lot was their tallest building, the Burj Khalifa. And then I was told, I was asking, you know, the tour to say, how much was used to build this kind of a building? And they told me $1 billion. 1 billion US, that is. And then to think of $15 billion, 15 Burj Khalifas being squandered and unaccounted for. It's amazing. It's absolutely, and then nothing is said, nothing is followed through and so on. And then recently, you know, we've been talking about the 3 billion from Command Agriculture, and also you look at the drug scandal, you know, the 60 million. And then you look at what is happening to our hospitals, to our education system, to our infrastructure and so on. And then you see that we haven't done something as a nation to put enough attention to these issues. One, to the government. Secondly, to even the region, and thirdly, to the international community. So I really was persuaded and convicted that together with others who have been talking about it, my compatriots, including Hopol Chingono, you know, Job Sikala and others, you know, I then called for the nation to action to say, let's set a date. And if you realize, actually announced the date nearly a month and a half before the 31st, so that we give the nation a chance to reflect and also to do due process, like notifying the police, which is required of us by law, to notify the police and our intention.
And you did all that?
We did all that.
Okay.
My letter, I notified the police, they sent back their response, and everything was
What
in
was
order.
their response?
They said to me, whilst it's your right to do the demonstration, it is okay, but our worry at this stage concerns the COVID pandemic and issues like that. So we would want you to reflect on how you would deal with matters like that. So they did not categorically say you can't hold it. You know, this is the message they gave back to me.
So as far as you're concerned, the cost was clear?
It was. It was clear because we had notified the police as required by the law. And, you know, as far as COVID is concerned, for instance, Trevor, you know, I said over and over that we will be wearing masks on the day. We will make sure that we avail hand sanitizers in case some don't have. So we're actually asking citizens to bring extra hand sanitizers so that everybody would have them. And then we're also encouraging even social distancing as we were marching, you know, because we felt very strong that, you know, corruption was a pandemic as good as COVID. Corruption was reducing our capacity to deal with COVID, and we couldn't wait. It was important for us to do something, and that is the determination we had, and that's why we went ahead and up until, of course, I was arrested.
So what were you hoping to achieve with the protests, Jacob?
Yeah, so firstly, our expectation was that we would bring to attention the issues of corruption to government, to citizens, and to the region specifically, to say, you know, we've been talking about these issues, but nothing has been done. And now it's time for us to show our intention to be serious in dealing with these issues. And so that's one of the first outputs we're expecting, that we want to bring awareness to the issues around corruption, very particular. And then also, we wanted corruption itself to be dealt with in a very active manner. You know, with 60 million that has just been looted, can it be restored? You know, other than just arresting somebody who has stolen the 60 million, can't we have a restoration to public funds of the 60 million so that it goes to support Mpilo Hospital, it goes to support Harare Hospital, it goes to Parerenyatwa and all the referral hospitals we have in this country. And that was our expectation, that it is not only going to result in people being fired, but in also making sure that part of that money, after all, it was not a long time after the scandal has occurred, but we can quickly recover some of the funds. So those were some of the expectations. And also our expectation was to unite the nation around these issues, that issues cut across the political divide, they cut across the tribal divides and so on. So if we can bring everybody to converge them on those issues, then we should be able to achieve more as a nation. And we're hoping to build this platform where Zimbabweans can come together and talk about issues and never about who you are, where you come from, which party you support, and which tribe you are. And that is really our wish in engaging on that.
Are you satisfied with where we are right now? You're currently on remand. What's your view on that?
And now this is the tragic story that defines who we are as a people and as a nation. That for such a cause, you know, the end result is that I spent 45 days in prison. I am on remand. I go to the police 3 times a week. So every other day I'm actually at the police station. And, you know, I have lost, I mean, temporarily I don't have my passport anymore. So you actually realize that you have lost more rights in trying to achieve people's rights, so which is very unfortunate, and this is not what I was expecting. But we knew it would come, because surely the government's reaction to this whole call for an anti-corruption march was clear from the onset.
You say the response was great in terms of the retweets and that kind of stuff. Now you're going to court. I saw the other day your tweet saying, I'm going to be in court. Who's going to join in? Has there been an outpouring of support to you going to court and people supporting you? Have you seen the retweets being converted into physical presence at court?
Yes, it has been amazing. The support really has been amazing. I mean, every time we go to court, you know, there are dozens of people, if not, I mean, probably they run into hundreds, people who come. I mean, the courtroom is so small that half the time it doesn't fit as many people as you know. But, you know, the support has been amazing. People have been supporting in many different ways, you know, and even also the personalized messages that I receive are heartening. I mean, I get lots of feedback from people asking how it is going and how they can support and so on. So we get a lot of feedback from citizens as far as that is concerned, and that is good. I mean, for us, because the real battle should be for the rights of the people of Zimbabwe, and never even about my rights as an individual, as Jacob Ngarivhume, but really about the people of Zimbabwe. And this is where we're taking the fight, and this is our view of what we need to do and focus going ahead.
Were you surprised by the way the protests, the support turned around to be very political, to be partisan? And some of the language being the language of violence. Were you surprised by that? I mean, you already speaking about the fact that we're divided. What did you make of that?
It's a true reflection of our society. This is how the state has divided the people of Zimbabwe, because it's always about who you are, who you're standing with. You know, every time someone in the country tries to speak out and drive a just cause, you know, the next thing is, who is Jacob Ngarivhume? On whose side is he? Is the MDC behind him? Where is ZANU-PF? And which faction of the MDC is it? I mean, all these things then are asked, and then people begin to say everything. So, I mean, I saw it coming. It's very clear because of how polarized our society is, and that is wrong. Again, this is why, and most of that really is driven by the divide and rule tactic of the state. The ZANU-PF government divides people. They divide this nation, and they divide our people to make sure that once that is talked about, and because initially I tell you, the support we're getting about the anti-corruption demonstration was cutting across the political divide. People within ZANU-PF were expressing their interest to speak out against corruption, up until when it became so toxic that you are then identified as an enemy of the state if you are supporting the 31st, which is what we didn't want.
So you are now on bail, Jacob, $50,000 bail. And you're reporting 3 times a week to the police. Am I right?
That is, you are right. That is correct.
I spoke to young Namatai Kwekweza, and Namatai on this show, and Namatai said, and I quote, "I am on bail, but I feel arrested every day." Do you feel arrested every day?
I would say, I would have loved to say no. But the reality is that, you know, you have to be in court half the time. And I was in court on Monday, I think, yeah. And then I have to, I mean, you go to the police every day. And then coupled with that, they also do a lot of follow-ups. I mean, I see vehicles following after me every now and again. When I go to the police station, I mean, I see people that I don't even know waiting for me. I mean, there are all these things that happen every now and again. But of course, the reason I would not feel that I'm still under arrest is that I've chosen not to give attention to that. So as they are following me, as I'm going to the police and I'm doing all these things every day, I've chosen to live a normal life so that I can focus on the things that I need to do. I need to make sure that...
How easy is that?
It's not easy, but it has taken me a lot of, you know, this is not my first time to be arrested. I was arrested in 2014 in Gweru. where I was detained at Gweru Central Police Station. I was arrested in Cholocho. I was arrested in Chimanimani. I was arrested in Nyanga. I have appeared in court in Nyanga. I have appeared in court in Gweru. You know, I have been all over, you know. So I think years of this kind of treatment has really strengthened my position to say, I can't focus my life on what they are doing on me, but I rather focus on the things that I believe are the right things that I need to. And this is what I simply do. It has come by years of going through this harassment from the state.
And whilst you were, what I find fascinating is that your videos were pretty clear, that you are non-violent, non-partisan. And yet the charge against you is of incitement to participate in public violence. But there are videos there of you saying, this is non-violent, this is non-partisan, this involves all of Zimbabweans. What do you make of that?
There you are, Trevor. So this is typically what we are dealing with. That, you know, you say, this is a white shirt, and they tell you, no, this is the blackest shirt we've ever seen. And then they build a narrative around that, this is a black shirt, and they convince themselves. You know, Joseph Goebbels, you know, Hitler's chief propagandist, once said, you know, a lie repeated often enough will not only end up becoming the truth, but it would end up convincing the liar that it is the truth. And this is where the state is in, where they actually believe their own propaganda, they believe their own lies, they believe their own illusions, you know, and this is very unfortunate. I mean, the charges, though I would not specifically talk about the charges because these are matters still before the courts, but it's clear that, you know, there's nothing corruption. And even also from the presentations that interactions we have with court officials and everybody, they just, you know, they're clear that this is politics. You know, this is coming from orders above and we are incarcerating you because this is what they want. It's
the officers usually, that's what they usually say.
I mean, they say that
we've been sent to do this to you.
Exactly. You know, when they arrest you, as you're going through the processes, I mean, they tell you, I mean, because I asked them, so which violence are you talking about? You know, they say to me, you know what, Ngarivhume, we'll be very frank. You can't ask us that question because we have no answers to it. You better go to the people who are sending us to arrest you. This is the situation of even arresting officers and officials. They know you have committed no offense. And even also, I believe even at the courts, they know we've committed no crime, I tell you. But we still go through the processes. And you are delayed, you are frustrated. But that does not put out the light. If anything, I'm rejuvenated.
Then the issue of first of all, spending time at Harare remand, then being moved to Chikurubi in leg irons. It pained me to see you and Hopewell manacled and with leg irons. What did that feel like to you? If it pains me, it must have done something to you. What did it do to you?
Yeah, you know what, Trevor? Initially, I was not even able, because all the other times I've been arrested, so I was never in leg irons and I was never in, but this time I was, and firstly I had to learn to walk in those shackles because it was.
And you're laughing about it.
I mean, what can I do? What can I say? I had to learn to walk in those things. They were very difficult, and they were eating into my flesh at one time because I was not comfortable and able to use them. And of course, I would always be in leg irons. Let me tell you what happened at one time. So we get to court, and they only take off the handcuffs and the leg irons just as you are about to enter the courts. So otherwise you are always handcuffed and so on. And then when they tried to take off the handcuffs for me, they failed. So they tried for about an hour. And then at the end, the officials then said, no, we want to reach a deal with you. Can we hide this so that you get into court with this thing? And then we try to pull it right into your jersey, and then so that the magistrate doesn't see it. I said, guys, are you crazy? You think you can make a deal like that with me? No. So as I got into the court, then I was really making sure that I bring
the
it to the
magistrate
attention.
must see it.
Exactly. And of course, I mean, he went on to reprimand, but this became really our lifestyle. So it's what makes it disheartening is not because it's done on me, or it's not because I'm angry at it, but what is disheartening is the fact that, you know, this is what you do to citizens who speak out against corruption. Meanwhile, those who have committed the crimes of corruption, the offenses, they are scot-free. They haven't returned a single dollar of their money. They haven't been arrested. They haven't been tried. Nothing has been done. The 15 billion still missing. No questions are asked. But those who speak out against the corruption, you are in handcuffs, you are in leg irons, you know, and you are living in Section D, the most dangerous section of Chikurubi and Harare.
Talk to me about Section D and how you were treated.
So this is your most dangerous criminals. You know, people.
So Jacob was in there, most dangerous criminal.
Of course, you know, with criminals who are on trial for, when you were in remand, criminals who are on trial for murder, on trial for rape, armed robbery, those are the people that you would meet there. When I was at Chikurubi, I was in a cell this size, probably 45 people in here, sleeping in here, and, you know, 10 of my inmates were saving life. Cellmates were saving life. About 4 were saving an average over 106 years. I think 2 were 106, and then another one was on 108, and then another one on 116, I don't remember. And then the rest were serving an average of 30, 40 years. So in other words, you are still not tried, but those are your friends and colleagues that you're living with. When I was in that section D of our prisons, there are no toilets, for instance. There's no running water in the toilets. And you are locked up for 17 hours, and there's no toilet. So if somebody has an upset tummy, then they have no toilets to use for 17 hours that you are locked up. There is one toilet without water. And so what I saw prisoners end up doing is they would, at Harare remand, they would relieve themselves in lunch boxes, keep it, you know, wrap it nicely, put it in a plastic bag, and then they keep it for the next 16 or so hours until the following day when they can dispose of it. And you know, I saw food would be served. You know, there's a broken down sewage at the D section of Harare Remand Prison. There's a broken down sewage, and then they put food bins right in the midst of that sewage because there's nowhere else to do it. And then they are serving food under those conditions. These are things I never thought are still happening in this country. And we asked, you know, Hopewell and I asked over and over that, can't we get this sewage fixed? I even offered to actually speak to my lawyer so that they could raise people I knew who could come and fix the broken down sewage. And I wouldn't have minded to pay for it. They said, no, if you're a prisoner, you can't do that. So every effort we would try to solve and bring reprieve to the prisoners around those matters and issues, they were shot down. And it was so heartbreaking. I mean, I saw young people would be fighting for the toilet. Someone would say, please, I need to just try to do something. Then someone says, you can't use the toilet because it would be stinking until the next day. And then there would be fights around those matters when those facilities should be basic human rights. Every citizen should have a right to access to all those. And also their human rights should be respected.
Do you think this is done deliberately to ensure that you don't ever want to go there, or this is total neglect?
Both. One is total neglect and incompetence on the part of those running the prisons and the state in particular. And then secondly, it's also, of course, meant then to intimidate you. But of course, how can you do that when you completely violate people's rights? And the other thing they would do, every time you go to court and you are coming back, they strip all the people who have gone to court naked. They say we're searching for weapons and making sure that you have not acquired weapons when you went to the court and on your way back. And then they strip you naked. They ask you to jump with arms spread like this.
That's dehumanizing.
That's dehumanizing. Jacob. That's dehumanizing. And of course, we refuse that. We refuse that ill treatment. But they would do it on prisoners.
What do they do when you refused? They allowed you to not to do it?
Of course, they allowed us not to do it. But then they still go on to do it on the other prisoners. And when you see fellow Zimbabweans going through that, it's one of the things that really frustrated me. At one time, I was speaking with the officer in charge, you know, the officer in charge, Harare prison, and also the one from Chikurubi, especially the one from Chikurubi. I was saying to him, you know what, your problem here is that you don't want to treat us as citizens because we're going through what we are going through. You appear to say, because you are suggesting and insinuating that, you know, we had lesser rights as citizens because we are going through this. Then I was telling him, you know what, my brother, we remain Zimbabweans no matter what. Everybody here at Chikurubi Maximum Prison remains Zimbabwean. Even when they are going to sit on the electric chair for execution, if their charge calls them to be executed, they remain Zimbabwean until the last breath comes out of their mouth.
And this is supposed to be correctional services.
Exactly. But it becomes a prison where you have no rights, and the sleeping space, you have only 30 centimeters with the next person. You are so squeezed like rats. You know, there were lice, you know, we call that tinda. You know, lots of them, and they would bite you all night, and the night is 17 hours. So, and I mean, fortunately for us, I mean, I grew up in the village, and I become so resistant and immune to those bites, and I would do my night sleep until the next day. But it was so bad. It was so bad. So the conditions in those prisons were horrible, Trevor, I tell you. Yeah.
Sad that we do this to each other.
Sure. Very sad. Very sad. You see, so this is who they are.
What does that do to you?
You know, one of the things it did to me is that I began to appreciate humanity. You know, to appreciate human beings, just that a person is a person. You know, even if they are serving, you know, because interestingly, you know, we would keep food. You keep your food and other stuff in prison. So you have your bucket and everything. So what then happens is, if you are meeting your lawyers and other things, you want to leave your things with somebody you trust. And who did I have to trust? Is that guy saving life? That guy's serving 106 years. They became my friends. We were on talking terms. We're speaking to one another, loving one another. That is very important. I began to then appreciate humanity.
Did they know why you were in there?
Of course they know.
What did they say?
They said, Mudara, well done for doing the things that you are doing and for coming here. This is good baptism for what you want to achieve.
So, Jacob, the intention, I assume, is to intimidate you, is to cripple you, is to humiliate you. And this has been done to you a number of times.
Yes.
So they're not getting to you.
They haven't, and they will not, and they will never. Because the belief and the faith and the conviction, you see, what drives me, and obviously many of my compatriots who are also going through the same, I believe, you know, what drives me, Trevor, is you see, when I go and engage with people on the ground, when I do that to have the time, you know, I don't do the hit and runs, whereby you just go and take a couple of pictures and go. I sit down with the people and listen to them. You know, this other day I was visiting people living off crushing stones. You know, I was in Bulawayo, you know, visiting, you know, I mean, I spent quite some time at a cemetery where you have houses built right into cemeteries. So I go and sit down with those people. I ask them, what then do you want us to do? They say, we need to speak out and keep fighting until this becomes right. When I have that mandate from the people and I then go out with it, it's not that I'm trying to, I mean, look here, I've been doing this for so long. But, you know, I've never been trying to publicize myself and going around to say this is what I'm doing, because I've just been doing it because it's so natural. And so those issues are coming from the people of Zimbabwe, and I so much believe in it, and I'm convicted that when I'm doing it, I do it with the conviction and the mandate I'm getting from the people. So if you then come on the way and you want to extinguish it and light it out, apparently and surely you won't succeed, because it's deep-seated.
But they're determined, aren't they? Doesn't that scare you?
I wish it could not, but I really, really just keep going. You know, Churchill once said, when you're traveling through hell, keep going. So you just
tell
keep
me, you are in Section D, and it's at night. Don't you have moments when you are like, why am I doing this? Or you actually find moments of resolve, and I need to go on. Where do you fall there?
Right.
Those quiet moments
Yes.
of darkness.
So, Trevor, the night at Chikurubi, so is Harare remand, starts at 3 p.m. So they close you in your cell from 3 p.m. through to 8 a.m. the following day, which gives you 17 hours of you being in your cell and supposed to be sleeping. So
17 hours.
17 hours, yeah. And then the rest of the 7 hours, you are out in the courtyard, which is still a very small, confined space. You reflect. You discuss. I mean, fortunately for this one, I was with Hopewell most of the time. So you imagine how much talking and discussing we did. You know, we actually liked it. You know, we shared same blankets. You know, we were together.
So they allowed you the two of you to stay together
for a long time.
Wow.
Until the last 2 weeks, I think. They only separated us in the last 2 weeks. So for the 4 weeks plus, we were always together, and that really was quite good. So we could share notes, you know, discuss about the country, you know, discuss a lot about, you know, Zimbabwe's heroes, you know, and what lessons we can draw from the founding fathers of this nation. And so you reflect ordinarily. And when you reflect, you avoid, number one, blaming yourself, because you should never blame yourself when you are doing the right thing. And then also you avoid the regretting, because it's very important that, you know, you are not founded on a position whereby you regret the things that you are doing. So if anything, you would then draw a lot of inspiration. You can't avoid thinking about your family, your children. You know, my wife would come and tell me, you know, your son is insisting that he wants to call you. I say, where is he taking it from? I mean, I've got a young son, he's 12. I have a daughter 13 and a young son who is 12. And in fact, he's just turning to be a teenager this week, actually. It's his 13th birthday. And then he would insist to his mother that, you know, I want to call Dad. And then the mother would say, why do you think you can call him when he's in prison? Then he says, yeah, but Mama, I see other prisons across the world, they've got phones. Prisoners can actually call home and speak to their children. Is it not the same here in Zimbabwe?
What does that do to you? To hear, what does that do to you?
It hurts.
It hurts.
Honestly, I mean, I will be very frank. It hurts. You know, it hurt me so much to actually see that my son would make an effort to speak with me, and then he can't. He can't even visit me, by the way. You know, so it does, and it also gives me the conviction that one day we need to make sure that our society is free of that. We need to change that for our society and for our people, and it actually then further strengthens me and really make me stronger for what I believe.
Do your children understand what you're doing and why you're doing it?
They are still young, but
Okay.
they do. So I said one is 14, she turned just 14, and the other one is turning 13 this week, and then the other one is still young, she's 9 years. And they do understand. You know, one of they wrote me messages when I was in prison. And because messages sometimes could not
that
come
already
through.
is going to my heart. What did they say?
I tell you, you know, my children said to me, in fact, they wrote and did some drawings and then sent it to the lawyer's phone, and then I read it. And then I cried. That's the only time I cried throughout
What made you cry?
So my daughter and my son wrote me similar messages. They said to me, Dad, we are proud of you and what you are doing. And one day when we grow up, we hope to do the same, to fight for the people. We love you so much. Keep going. We don't regret that you are our father. It sent me to tears.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's special, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Have you lost friends as a result of this? Some people not wanting to talk to you, some people not wanting to call you. What's been the experience like?
It's interestingly, if anything, I would say I now have far more friends.
That's good.
And, you know, when one of my earliest light and, you know, because the arrest was very violent. Let me just walk you through my arrest.
Sure, yes.
It was a very violent arrest.
In front of the kids?
So what we did, because we're seeing the intention of the state, so ordinarily we moved the family away. I mean, I moved my children away. They couldn't just witness that. Okay. If they were there to witness the manner and nature of arrest that I went through, I would have destroyed them. So we had moved them away. They were not home. And so I was actually walking into a church to pray, our local church, in the morning. And then, so this quantum vehicle arrived with about 12 men. Only 2 had a police uniform, but it was torn and not very clear. So then the rest had no specific police uniform. They were just in civilian clothing. And 4 of them had AK-47s. Yeah. And 2 had pistols. So they said, Jacob Ngarivhume, we're here to arrest you for inciting public violence. And then they all jumped out of the vehicle, cocked their guns.
In a violent manner.
In a violent manner. And then everybody, and then they were muscular. They were deliberately chosen to be very muscular. None of them had a small body, you know. And then they were ready. And then I said, and then they wanted to handcuff me and everything. And then I resisted that. I said, no, I'm cooperating. You want me to get into the vehicle? I'm doing that. Then why do you want to handcuff me? And then they bundled me into that vehicle. I actually thought they were going to kill me. I actually didn't. So then, one of the first light moments I got for that day was when I saw Hope will come through. Because he was arrested, I think, 2 hours after me. And then when I saw him walk into that police office at Central Police Station, it was a huge relief to me to say, wow, at least I have somebody to
fellow
witness.
Criminal.
So, I mean, then of course, so I'm then responding to say, do I have...
I'm so delighted that you're able to still laugh. I mean, that was such an infectious laugh there.
Yeah.
Where do you get this from? To be able to laugh in the midst of this darkness?
Yes, this is the nature of this work that we're doing and the call to fight for what you believe in. You can't afford to be bitter about it. You know, you can't afford to be bitter. You know, after all, Trevor, I understand that it's, you know, this is what you go through. This is the price that you got to, and it's like
you're clear there's a price to pay.
Exactly.
And you're ready to pay for that price.
It's a cross that you got to carry, and you carry it with humility. And it's also, you know, it's also a cup that you have to drink, and you just got to know that, you know, in drinking that cup, it comes with different. So I was actually saying to you, if anything, I've had more friends. You know, I've had many more people coming, and I'm now friends with a lot of people. And of course, there are also those who now feel very uncomfortable to associate, because if they do, they are not sure of the perceptions, and especially those who are in governmental circles and so on. I mean, they ordinarily now want to speak to me midnight. If I'm to have meetings with them, it has to be really midnight. And now, I'm actually, since I was released from prison, I now know that it has to be 24/7 to engage and meet with people. It can't be like during the day all the time. Yeah. So this is what's happening.
Jacob, you are, for me, an enigma. You are a mathematician and statistician. You are a person of faith. And I hear you about the calling and so forth. So you have decided to commit your life to this journey. Talk to me about that.
It is. Someone asked me once, how do you mix the fact that you are a mathematician,
a statistician,
and a statistician, and you are a faith person, so strong faith conviction like you have, and then you also are a politician? How do you balance that? But you know what? This is my faith is so foundational, and born and raised like that. You know, my parents contributing a lot, especially my mother, of course. When I then gave my life to Christ, continued on the journey and the things that I was doing, I mean, I have always found a place to balance the things that I do. You know, my mathematics, my statistics, and
your faith,
things, and my faith. You see, they work so well, and I'm well able to balance it, and I actually appreciate that I was raised like that. And it all fits together, because you see, the issues of faith are about your conviction and what is right inside your spirit and your soul. And this is what drives me. You see, I believe that, for instance, the God is the God of justice. The reason why I believe God will judge the world is because He's just. So we can't negate issues of justice, you know, in our life, and also as a legacy even to our children. We want to show our children that we believe in justice and we can fight for justice. And this is what convicts me so much that we are doing the right thing. Because a nation that does not respect its own laws, its constitution, I believe also even before God, is not in right standing with God. We need to do it otherwise. So I'm quite convicted that all these things fit together.
Well, what do you say to the politicians that say, you know, people of faith stay away from politics?
Is because they want to create a dark room to steal 15 billion and never account for it, to steal 3 billion and never account for it, to steal 60 million and never account for it, to inflate contracts and pay themselves 7 million and never account for it. The reason they don't want to see people of faith or anybody who has such convictions is because, you know, they also know if you are a person of faith, faith normally drives you very strong. You know it. If it drives you in the wrong direction, it can also drive you in the wrong direction and you go really far and will never be able to reach you. But, you know, if you are right in the right direction, they know it also that it's a huge inspiration to move you forward. And so it's wrong. Politicians can't dictate to anybody that if you are a person of faith, stay away from politics. Our politics need everybody. People of faith, even those who are not of faith, we all need to come together and create a platform where we encourage accountability. That's all.
You were a founding member of MDC at the University of Zimbabwe. So you were active pretty early on. When did Jacob discover that he was going to be a politician?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, you sometimes can't really tell when did that happen or start. But I tell you, even as I was growing up, being a young, you know, I grew up in the village. You know, I grew up in Bikita. I only was in town for the first time when I was doing Form 1. Otherwise, I had grown up in the village in Bikita, heading cattle and goats, and I loved that very much. You know, I was the boy who would, you know, grew up in a big family. You know, we are 23 children by my father, and by my mother is 8 of us. So that's quite a big family, and I enjoyed growing up in the villages and so on. But then, especially when I was like Form 1, I then realized that, you know, my commitment and desire to fight for people and represent them, and especially to fight for my convictions. Because where it started is really that when I have a conviction on what is right, I stand up. Very committed, very, very committed. And that then grew. You know, it then continued to grow and grow as I was like advancing in my education. But I mean, I was always, for instance, a very strong opponent of the government. You know, I was very particular about issues of corruption back in the 80s. Very, very particular about Kukura Hundi, for instance, that it was the wrong way to go. Very particular about the things, even when I was young. So I was quite outspoken, and I would say these things as I was growing up, but it then shaped as years went by.
Jacob, you like I said, you were a founding member of MDC.
Sure.
You've had an in-out kind of relationship with MDC. Perhaps the one that sticks out is the fact that when MDC decided to join the inclusive government, you disagreed with that. You are a man of conviction, and talk to me about why you thought it was not the right thing to do, and whether you regret not having participated in the inclusive government.
Morgan Tsvangirai and the MDC won the 2008 elections. And to me and to many Zimbabweans, we believe that was the first coup before the 2017 coup. We had so much hope that since the MDC had won that election, we must stand our ground until the end. And then the runoff was called, though the election result had taken quite a long time to come out. And then when it eventually came, they called for a runoff. Okay, fine, which was at law because they said none had gotten above 50%. But then the problem then came when it then says, okay, there was a lot of violence prior to the runoff. And then the discussion started, the mediation by SADC. To me, my reading of that situation and position was that Morgan Tsvangirai and the MDC were not negotiating from a position of strength. Morgan Tsvangirai should have stood his ground and made sure that, you know, the battle was fought to the end. Either he should have asked, we should have asked as the opposition, we should have asked for SADC to guarantee the runoff, to make sure that it's free and fair, credible, and all the SADC principles and guidelines are adhered to. And then we have a free and fair runoff, and then Morgan Tsvangirai comes out victor. But of course, that did not happen. And then you could clearly see that the negotiations were meant to restore a Mugabe who had been broken down and defeated. And that hurt me. That I felt it was not the right way. I actually thought at the end of this all, the MDC will come out weaker. Because I felt it was not right to get into an arrangement with a person you have defeated, and then they have the upper hand. Mugabe retained all the instruments of power. They actually increased and changed his title. That's when you actually realize they started calling him commander-in-chief, head of all the the universities and what have you. It was just a show of force that we are still in control and we're taking over. So this is what I didn't.
So it's on that basis that you disagreed with.
I felt that Mugabe had lost that election, and the people of Zimbabwe deserved to see him out of government because he had lost. But that did not happen, and I just felt this was disastrous for the people of Zimbabwe.
And you've been very clear, as far as I'm concerned, forming Transform Zimbabwe. And you talk about the transformation of each individual, of each citizen, of the fabric of our society for there to be change. Talk to me about your convictions around the importance of transforming society and the individual.
Individuals, Trevor, come from families. This has been my conviction, that individuals come from families. We're all raised in families. And if in my family, I respect my sister, then there's no way I would violate her rights when I become leader out there. When this sister respects her brother, then she is likely to be a better person in society. So my conviction is that we need to go back to basics, that transformation needs to start at a family level. I need to raise my children, telling them that you should not accept a bribe. You should not shortchange somebody, because if these are the values I inculcate in them, when they grow up, they are better off. They're in a position to make sure that should they become leaders in business, society, and so on, then they uphold those values. But half the time we've expected miracles from leaders at a national level, but when we've never made effort to invest even in families to make sure that those leaders coming out of those families, they are the right ones. And so that's why I feel that transformation should start at a family level and at a societal level, that we need a transformed society. We should then work hand in gloves, even with the state, to make sure that if we say we don't pay the police bribes, it becomes a culture whereby we tell everybody that we don't pay bribes. So should they then demand bribes, then we're in a better position, because we have the value system that tells us that corruption is bad. And this is the battle we have in a country and in a society, whereby we expect miracles at a global level, but at a very localized level, we don't have. I tell you, if you were to go back into the personal lives of most of these leaders, you would see that the arrogance they may display at a national level is coming from similar arrogance at a very personal and family level.
I'm with you there, Jacob, 100%. And as you're talking, the mountain that we face in terms of transforming the national fabric, to me, is daunting. I don't hear politicians talking the language that you're talking right now, in terms of healing the individual so that you heal society and you heal the nation. I hear from the ruling party, from the opposition, very divisive and toxic politics. What's your say on that? Our politics has been so much divided, from my view, by the way we have been governed for years. The divide and rule has worked very well for politicians. And the state, ZANU-PF specifically, they have divided this nation. They've loved to divide us across tribal lines,
across, even educational lines. They've divided us across all these different denominations to say you are this, you are that. This has become a way then to control us. And once you feed division and toxicity, then sadly at one time you won't even be able to control it yourself. And this is where we find ourselves. And this is very unfortunate, because we need to create a platform, even as politicians, be us in the opposition or those in the ruling party. We need to create a platform that can enable the people of Zimbabwe to come together and agree on issues and set aside the various divisions. But we have not been able to do that until now. And that's why we are trying. For us, a platform like the 31st protest, the anti-corruption protest, we want to make it non-partisan. We want to make it reach across.
But it was overtaken by the partisan issues, Jacob.
Hugely, it was taken by the partisan issues. But I tell you, interestingly, we still have a huge number of people from across the political divide that still stand with what we are calling for and what we are doing.
So I hear you and I agree with you about the divisive politics from ZANU-PF into tribes, into this and that. They cannot run away from that responsibility. But should we not be expecting the opposition to rise above that?
Absolutely.
In order to build a new nation.
Yes.
We cannot expect the opposition to speak like the ruling party, which is divisive, toxic, and poisonous. We're expecting people like you who are working on transforming the society. But right now, you are the only one who's talking about transforming society.
I hope there are others, Trevor. Honestly, I hope I'm not the only one talking about transforming.
Should we, let me press you on that. Should we not expect the opposition to lead in rebuilding the society, the institutions, the person, in transforming the people that we are?
This is exactly what I'm saying we are trying to do. Remember, I'm coming from the opposition also. This is exactly what we are trying to do, to speak a language that unites this nation. And I think it's in everyone's desire to do it. And I think most of my compatriots and colleagues in the opposition, they share these views. If they haven't been able to express it very well, that's another story to tell. But I actually feel that we feel very strongly. I mean, I'm convicted, as I said to you earlier on, that I'm convinced that this is what we need to look into. And there's a new generation of Zimbabweans emerging which share these things that I'm talking about. Remember I said to you earlier on, I go sit down with young people. I was with students this other day, yesterday, and I spent so many hours with them, walking through their troubles. They can't access to food and everything. And I think this is informing how I view things. And there's a growing movement of people who feel like the way we do and who are actually doing it the way we do. And I think gradually we should come to a point whereby this becomes a national convergence and a national movement of people believing in these ideals and that we can do politics differently in this country. And Zimbabweans are sick and tired.
I would love to see that. That's a very hopeful point there, Jacob. You, in 2016, Jacob, you were part of the National Electoral Reform Agenda, NERA. What's your sense about where we are as far as electoral reforms are concerned?
Yeah, electoral reforms, you know what, our argument then in 2016 and before, and even now, was that we need to build the institutions that can facilitate for free, fair, and credible elections. We have the SADC principles and guidelines to free and fair elections as a starting point, which we feel that if we respect in this country, then we should be able at least to have a credible, free and fair election. And the SADC guidelines are very simple. They don't call for manna from heaven or things that are not feasible. It's very simple. I mean, for instance, I think it's Article 2.1.5, which talks about the right to all contesting parties to the right to equal opportunity to access state media, for instance. Right. And then Article, I think 2.1.7 talks about impartial, courts and also impartial electoral institutions running elections. Those are simple things that need to be provided for. And those are the things we're fighting for under the National Electoral Reform Agenda, to say, let's have them. But still, I look at ZTV now, which is the national broadcaster in terms of I look at it. I was watching news last night. You can't help but regret that. Is this the country we want? Everything on there is about ZANU-PF. Mnangagwa this, Mnangagwa that, ZANU-PF this, ZANU-PF that. Mrs. Mnangagwa has done this, and so on. So it appears then at the end that you have 3 citizens in this country and 1 institution and 1 organization, which is ZANU-PF. And when you look at that and the fight we have done since 2016, you actually see that we have made very little progress as far as the electoral reforms we're fighting for are concerned.
There are some who believe that we ought to have a transitional arrangement. That where we are right now, first of all, we are so broken as a people. Our national fabric is so broken. The trust is not there. Maybe what we need is to have a national transitional authority to take us through that no election is going to be able to deal with the issues that we've created over the past 40 or so years. What view do you take as far as the NTA is concerned?
One of the issues, one of the experience I actually had for when I worked in the MDC Alliance is that I realized that we need to go beyond politics to solve issues in our country. Politics alone has failed to solve our challenges and problems. Elections themselves have absolutely failed. I mean, let's face the truth. We are in this crisis we have currently because of elections have failed to solve the crisis and resolve the issues at hand. So it's very important for us now to say, where do we need to look to? What do we need to do differently? And this idea of making sure, I believe that we need a national convergence platform, which does not bring together only the politicians, but also civil society, churches, business, and ordinary citizens. Remember, there are citizens who don't belong to any of the groupings that we have talked about.
That's the majority, actually.
Actually, it's the majority. In an election, Trevor, I think our last election had what? How many total votes should be? 4 million, thereabouts. Not more than 4 million, I think, about thereabouts. But then our population is virtually 13 million from the last census. And the projections will take it even beyond that now. So the issue is, where are the rest of the millions of people who don't...
They are put off by the politics.
You see, either they are put off by the politics or even, remember you are not eligible to vote until you get to 18 years, because that's what the law says. So all the people who are below 18, they're excluded by law from participating in the political engagements in this country. So where is their voice and who is hearing and listening to them? That's why we need to create a platform which is bigger than the political platform. We need a platform that looks and listens to the young children going to school. And you look at the crisis we have in this country, broken down educational system. You are not even sure whether schools are open or not. There are no teachers. And then meanwhile, the president is saying, they are holding the nation at ransom. So we need their voice to be heard also. So we need a platform which is bigger than the political.
With what in mind at the end of it? What do we get?
At the end of it, the people of Zimbabwe need to decide. If they so feel that they can't trust the politics to get out of this crisis, and they would want an arrangement whereby a power brokering arrangement, which is a power brokering pact, which is not for the elites, but can drive the country to a free and fair and credible election, so be it. Whether people call that a national transitional authority, whether people that call that a national convergence, then we need that. We need to create a platform, Trevor, which converge the people of Zimbabwe around issues, which can enable us to build a vision for Zimbabwe. There should be something that I should be proud of, that, I'm a Zimbabwean. When I see the Zimbabwean badge, I want to identify and say, wow, beautiful. You are a fellow compatriot. But It's not like that currently. We are so much divided. It has to be you and I. Are you Ndebele? Are you Shona? Are you MDC? Are you Transform Zimbabwe? Are you ZANU-PF? We have to get to that.
Are you hopeful, Jacob? I mean, this is you're preaching to the converted, me. But this is such a tall order in terms of what I see out there. Are you hopeful in terms of being able to heal the national fabric, being able to find a solution to the crisis that we face right now, being able to deal with the issues rather than the personalities?
I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that the drive we are doing and the emerging forces of young people who are saying, no, you people, we need to come together. We need to create a national convergence platform. I'm very glad that this drive is gathering momentum. I mean, the support I'm getting for the 31st is very heartening. You know, many people did not know me before then. But, you know, I tell you, the support has been overwhelming. And the issues we are articulating, people are identifying with them and saying, this has been the missing link. Let's run with this. And we are prepared. So when you see that national galvanization of people coming together and agreeing on this platform, it's so hopeful. This is the reason why, Trevor, I tell you, even when I go to prison, when I'm incarcerated and I'm at the police every day, what gives me the strength to endure all that is the support I'm getting from these emerging Zimbabweans who are saying, this is what we've been looking for, this is what we've been missing, and we need to identify with it and support it.
So in 2019, you decided to exit the MDC alliance. Why, Jacob?
Transform Zimbabwe is still a very young political party. When we discussed with the MDC, the late Morgan Tsvangirai, whom I salute so much, and of course, then later on, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, and also, you know, we discussed and we're working together very well. We decided to exit the alliance because we wanted to focus on building our institution and organization as Transform Zimbabwe. And we also realized that for now would be even more effective identifying issues which cut across and beyond the political, issues that can converge the nation. And we felt that we still need to continue on that work, which is what precisely we are doing. And I'm glad when we're doing the anti-corruption protests, we're not identifying ourselves as Transform Zimbabwe, not as any political entity, but as citizens. And this is the fight that we need for now, so that we identify and are able to galvanize the nation to move forward. And even for us to be aware of what we need to do differently to make sure that we come out of the situation that we have.
What's your view on the state of the opposition right now?
What in fact I think is wrong is the divisions that I see fanned by the state. I mean, court judgments, ZANU-PF has continued to divide the opposition, in my view. And when I see a fighting and divided opposition, not only just a divided opposition, but also a divided nation. Me having to tell you that I'm Dow and coming to a situation where I have to tell you that I'm Shona, it's not right. And when I see any form and kind of division, I actually see that this is not what we want. But I'm glad that as far as the opposition is concerned, we are trying to regroup and strengthen ourselves. And I think you can't take that away from the opposition, that there is at least some effort to come together to identify one another. But of course, I'm not glad when I see people fighting. I'm not glad when I see people divided and when I see people pointing fingers at each other. That's not the nation we want. That's not the Zimbabwe we want. I would love one day to see a Zimbabwe that has, I would love to see, in fact, one thing that I haven't seen, since birth. I haven't seen a president who represents everybody, who represents me for being born and raised in the rural village, who represent me because I'm from the opposition. I see our leadership, our presidents, Mugabe and now ED. I see they are very particular to a specific group of people. They are so particular that if you are ZANU-PF, you are entitled to access mines, you are entitled to access land, you are entitled to be corrupt and nothing happens to your case. But if you are opposition, if you speak out against corruption, you are supported and funded by the West. You should go to Chikurud maximum for 45 days where there's no access to water and no access to toilets because you are in the opposition. I would love and cherish one day, Trevor, to see a president who embrace all Zimbabweans because we are one nation, whereby I can speak out against the president and still live. And I've watched debates in America where I've seen reporters shouting at Trump and asking things that I would know if you were in Zimbabwe would not be with you the next day. I would love to see, in the States, you can literally get to the walls of the White House. You can get to the gates of the White House. It's an open place which Americans own. I would love to see that one day. I would love to see a Zimbabwe whereby if you're in South Africa, Malema can stand up. Look at President Cyril Ramaphosa, be it Jacob Zuma, and speak his mind out. Still walk out of that parliament with no message to say, we'll kill you the next day. That is the Zimbabwe I cherish. A few days before I was arrested, I got a message, a threatening message to say, either we'll kill you or we'll arrest you if you are lucky. And then a couple of days later, I was arrested. I didn't know whether to call myself lucky or not. But I just felt this is not the Zimbabwe that we want. We rather want a Zimbabwe and a leadership and a president who unites the people of Zimbabwe, that we identify to be one. Who actually, criticism is very healthy. My brother Trevor, if I tell you the way you're running Alpha Media is not the right way to do, don't take me to be an enemy. We are brothers. If you don't agree, fine. We do so respectively. But in this country, if you oppose and stand out for the truth, you become an enemy of the state. Instead, the president invests all the money in your arrest. See, some of the arresting officers, those who were in AK-47s, I looked at them. There was nothing nice on them except the well-polished AK-47. The rest was horrible. The shoes were, were in tatters. The collar was broken down. Everything. You see hardness in his face.
Do you think that, or rather let me rephrase this, our young people, your kids, 13, 14, I have a daughter who's 14, and the younger generation, maybe slightly older than that, have they been poisoned by this thinking, by the way we carry ourselves? You sound hopeful, but you do point the weaknesses and the things that we need to deal with.
Yes.
Do we have a young generation that is seized by the issues and has not been poisoned by what you and I have become?
Our young generations, our children, I told you that my son was saying, I'm going to call Dad from prison. He still believes it's possible. When I came out, he was saying to me, so Dad, next time should you be arrested, will I be able to call you? I say, my son, this is what we're fighting for. That one day you'll be able to call me when we are arrested and I'm incarcerated. But now the thing is, young minds, the beauty about young minds is that they are adaptable to change and to teaching. I still believe it's not too late. For those young kids, we can still teach them the right thing. But for us to get to a position where I can have that conversation and assure them, we need to deal with those in power, with us who are quite old and believe that everything is either ZANU-PF or anti-ZANU-PF. And for us to get to that position, we have to endure prison. I'll tell you something, Trevor, very interesting. I will never forget when I was arrested the first time in 2014. I've shared this with a couple of friends. At Gweru Central Police Station, when I was arrested, I was profiled by the police officers there. When they profiled me, one of them said to me, Ngarivhume, he took me by the side actually, and did a very unorthodox thing. He called me and said, you know what, Ngarivhume, I looked at your profile and I admire so much your faith and how an upstanding and right citizen you have been all this time. You have never brushed with the law. But let me tell you something. Now that you have chosen this path, this political path in this country, for you to know whether you are on course, you should, the way to a successful political career in this country will take you through prison, through arrests, And it will never take you through nice streets, built up lights and hotels. It will take you through the most horrible. You will end up knowing all the courts, the magistrates, the judges, the prisons and everything. And then secondly, for all the people you see for that, the people who will be arresting you and doing everything, they probably have nothing to do with your arrests. But the people who would have everything to do with your arrest, you may never meet them and they'll be acting on orders. So good luck on your journey. If you see no arrests and no incarceration down the line, check your compass to see if you are still on the right way. I said, what manner of statement is this from a police officer? A policeman? And guess what? I've been to every court. I've been to every prison. But now the question really, Trevor, is that the society we want to build? Is that the Zimbabwe we want? Whereby somebody in wisdom will tell you that for you to be, and to be successful to me means we achieve what we are fighting for, to see a just society, a society that respects people, a society that respects, opposition and so on. But now, why do we have a society then that says, if you are to fight for that and to become successful, this is what you have to go through. We need to change something. And now it's an image we need to build even also in our young people. And it's a fight, but I still believe it's possible. And I am still hopeful that your children and my children should come to a point where they grow up in a Zimbabwe that is collective, that we love one another because we are Zimbabweans, that we are even proud to say that we are Zimbabweans, and I believe that is still possible.
Wow. That's a lot of hope there, Jacob. Pretty uplifting, but lots of heavy lifting to be done to get there. Jacob, we love books on this show, and we're going to turn on to the Trevor Book Club and ask you to share a couple of books that you've read that have inspired you, that have impacted on you with our viewers. Sure. What books have you read that you recommend?
A nice one. Firstly, of course, I regularly and almost every day read my Bible. That's the first book I would want to say. I hardly go days without reading. I get a lot of inspiration from scriptures, different stories that you find. I'm hugely inspired by those. They are quite a guiding principle in the way I live. And when I was in prison, one of the things is we asked for books to come through. And they didn't allow any other book except my Bible.
Oh, wow.
Very strange. And I had to smuggle only one, actually. I smuggled Strive's book, building $1 billion business in Africa. So actually we smuggled, they got into something and then they thought it was something and then I found it in and I read it through and then I took it out, which was very unfortunate. I've done a lot of reading. And of late, actually, currently I'm reading 2 books. When I was in prison also, I eventually managed to get, the lawyers eventually managed to get one book which I had meant to read, which is My Life by Bill Clinton. Okay. Yeah, so I've been going through that. It was quite an amazing story to look at where Bill Clinton came from and so on. So I read through that. Then currently I'm repeating, reading Long Walk to Freedom. Oh, wow. I've been so much inspired by Nelson Mandela. I've been so much inspired by his story that I'm actually reading that book, and I've read it before, of course. And then one thing that has frustrated me so much is that our own politicians have no time to reflect and write books about themselves. It's so sad that Mugabe died before he could even write a book. If he had actually written a book, I would have read it, because I would have loved to understand his anatomy and his reading of situations. So I've read The Story of My Life, Joshua Ngomo's autobiography. And also, of course, one of the books that I loved a lot reading about was Dreams from My Father. These days, I'm reading books that give me a lot of inspiration to keep going. Because, you don't want to come to a position whereby, sometimes when even there's no encouragement from outside, you want to find it in yourself. And books, I've turned to books, and they've been very, very inspirational and good for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Jacob, it's been amazing talking to you. You know, in the midst of what you're going through, you've been laughing, and it's clear that you're a man of conviction, a man of principles, a courageous man. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
I personally pray for God's cover over you. For Zimbabwe to become the Zimbabwe that we want, we need principled, upstanding men and women of conviction like you. So I do wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Allow me, Jacob, to tend to our viewers in Zimbabwe, on the continent and all over the diaspora who watch this show every week, to thank you for watching, for making this show what it has become. And to ensure that you don't miss out on this weekly show, please, we invite you to press on this subscribe button so that you get a notification every time we have a new show. We also have below this show podcasts for your listening pleasure. So until next time, cheers to you all.